So here we are. We have in this big bowl our mixed pickles. So what's in here? Well, today what's in here is some leftover cabbage, not enough corn to do a whole canning, banana peppers, poblano peppers, bell peppers, and that's it, right? So normally, if we also at the same time the signs are right and the garden's on and everything, if we have green beans but not enough to do a whole canning, then we will also blanch green beans and let them cool totally, and they'll be mixed in here as well. The corn, if you're blanching it on the cob, you blanch it for around 8 minutes. And then you lay it out and let it completely cool. And then you take it off the cob and you put it in your bowl. Green beans also get blanched for 8 minutes. And then they're laid out to cool completely. We usually spread out butcher paper on the table, and we will let them cool that way, and it takes a while. Now the brine, which is over here, I'll show you. This is the brine. The brine was made last night, so it's 1 gallon of spring water, and this is important, spring, 1 cup of canning salt, and 1 cup of white vinegar. So when you bring the gallon of spring water, the cup of vinegar, and the cup of canning salt to a rolling boil for 6 minutes, then you turn it off, and put a lid on it so it doesn't get any dust or anything in it, and you walk away. And you're going to let that brine come completely down to room temperature before you ever do anything with it. You don't want to try to ferment with something hot. So the corn is blanched, the green beans are blanched. They're allowed to cool completely. The brine is made, it's allowed to cool completely. Your cabbage and your peppers are raw. It's as simple as that. It is not rocket surgery to ferment. So, next step. So, before we get going, if you have questions, you can put them into the comments here. I'll pull up my other device so I can see if you have questions. Let me turn the volume down here. So one of the more important things here that I want to tell you is don't, don't bruise your cabbage. A lot of people I see online, I don't know where they learned it, if it was from a book or maybe from their grandparents, or maybe it's just somebody else's tradition on how to make kraut or other things. But what they're doing is they're taking their kraut and they're putting it in a bowl and they're pounding it, some of them, and some are massaging it until it's soft. And when you do that, you end up with mushy kraut, which I guess maybe somebody likes that. We don't. Or bruised kraut, which means the kraut gets off in color. So you have to use your absolute sharpest knife if you're going to use a knife. We use a mandolin and we shred it. And then, you just mix your mixed pickles up. So this is called mixed pickles because it's just a mix mash of everything, and we're just going to ferment it all together. This isn't like a dill pickle. We don't add any herbs or seasonings to this. It is simply just fermented. So it's nice and sour, and it's one of our favorite things to eat on a cold winter night. I think I'm just going to put it in with a spoon. So you just start shoveling it in, guys. A lot of people are afraid of fermentation. They think that, it's going to kill them. I've been eating ferments since I was old enough to chew food. So not very old at all. I can do it with my hands, honey. And then I've been eating them now. I'm 40 years old, so I've been eating them for that long. Now, one thing I am going to do, and I want you to pay attention now. I'm not tamping this. I'm just pushing it down a little bit. in the jar just to get it all nice and packed in there. So we have banana peppers, habaneros, not habaneros, sorry, you could if you wanted to. We have banana peppers, poblanos, and bells in here.
You took the seeds out?
I did take the seeds out. My husband has a soft mouth. He does not want something that's going to burn him a new mouth. Now, one thing that we do is just pack it down in there as well as you can. You can see this is why it's called mixed pickles. It's all mixed up. It's a bunch of different stuff. Then we take one hot pepper. This is a jalapeno, and it goes just in the very top. And you can see I've left a good amount of headspace there, and I have a reason for that, and that is that I want all my stuff to stay nice and packed down in there. Now, some people will take a cabbage leaf and they'll force it down in there to act as kind of a weight. You could use glass weights if you want to use glass weights. We haven't found that it makes that big of a difference. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Today I don't have any. We also have used springs. And I like the springs better than the weights because they're easier to get out. They kind of spring up on their own. So now I'm just ladling, and I'm gonna need a butter knife. The brine onto it, and I'm gonna burp out all the air bubbles. Just like if you were canning, guys. Yes, it's 5% vinegar. But now, remember, the vinegar isn't actually doing the pickling here. So, Mark and I have a theory on why our grandparents did this, and I think it's because they like their kraut extra sour. So, some people do just salt and water. When we do corn, we do just salt and water when it's corn alone. When it has the cabbage and the peppers, we add the vinegar.
Peppers getting to you?
No, I started getting choked earlier, and I didn't get a drink before. I didn't really drink enough before I started here. So that's my burping knife, in case you wonder why I've got that. Now I'm going to just top this off. And guys, you know, a lot of people ask us about using old lids. This is when we use old lids. So, like, say you have a spaghetti jar and it has those, my mother-in-law calls them locking lids. And you can't really use it to can. That's when we would use that. Today we're just using ball. They're not really fit for nothing else anyway.
Because these need to breathe.
Yeah, and these need to, so I'm not like torquing this down, by the way. My hands are wet now and I can't open it back.
I thought you might have put it on a little too tight
there. You just put it on 3-finger tight, which is like literally just down. It needs to breathe and it will work. And when I say it will work, what I mean is that it will bubble and it will actually seep out a little bit. And you need to have this in a box while it's fermenting. So what we do is I make the jars and then we put them in a cardboard box that's lined with newspapers. If you've seen my stories when I'm over at my mother-in-law's, I often show you hers. She keeps hers in the closet. We keep ours. She keeps hers in the closet of her bedroom, which is in her bathroom because she has a walk-in in her bathroom. We keep ours in our bathroom closet. It's tile in there, so it's nice and cool, and that helps to keep it a nice, stable temperature all the time, you know. So there's that. And I'm not like tamping this down. I'm just pushing it gently so as to make sure that I can get the most in the jar that I can. But like I said, if it makes you feel more assured about it, use a weight, use a spring, use what you got. Put a cabbage leaf down in there, and you would force, if you had a cabbage leaf to do it, you would force that leaf down around the sides, and that would kind of act as a barrier to keep everything nice and weighted down.
Easy.
Ooh, Sally Bella. Shannon over here spilling stuff. You hear Mark giving me a hard time. Now, you can see I do have a little bit of stuff floating. I'm unworried, but I know that that would worry a lot of people. Now, where's my burping knife? Fermentation is simple. It is the oldest form of food preservation. It is very unlikely. So another thing, since we're talking about this and about how people are afraid of it, it's very unlikely that you're going to have a problem with the fermentation. Now, do you notice anything? There's no dirt under my nails. My nails are nice and clean. My vegetables were washed before I worked with them. My utensils have been cleaned and sterilized. And everything I'm doing is in a clean way. I'm not...
Even these old dirty lids.
Yeah, even these lids have been run through the dishwasher. So that's the key to any canning, not just fermentation. I didn't put a hot pepper in that one, sir, but that's okay. You can come and get it if you want to. That's the key to any time you're canning at all, is make sure you're clean. I mean, I hope that those things are common sense and that everybody knows that you should be clean when you're handling food. But sometimes I see things that make me question whether or not people actually are. But always wash your hands before you handle food. Always wash your utensils and make sure your jars have been cleaned and sterilized. Your vegetables get washed as soon as they come in, even if they're organic. Still a needful thing. And then you really don't have to worry about it. So botulism is the most feared thing in canning. Botulism actually comes from the soil, which is why I mentioned washing your vegetables, even if you garden organically, because splashback's a thing when you have heavy rain. Animals dig and throw dirt around. Birds crap everywhere, whether they're your chickens or the wild ones. I mean, it's just be clean. But botulism comes from the soil, and that's the reason that we're extra clean about washing our vegetables and keeping our hands and fingernails clean. And I see a lot of people say, oh, dirt won't hurt. And in a lot of times and circumstances, that is correct. But when we're talking about food preservation, it is not.
That's a old lid.
That was from grape juice in 2021, guys. And we're not doing a ton here tonight. And the reason we're not is because we are exhausted. We did like 9 cannons of tomatoes yesterday. We did a bushel of bell peppers roasting and preserving in oil. Today we did another bushel of tomatoes for sauce. We've roasted those and have been working them all afternoon. What have you guys been doing? Have you ever tried this in a crock? Okay, so our grandmothers and my brother to this day use a crock. I'm gonna need probably a pint jar for the next one, Mark. To use a crock, Mark's mama had a creek rock. Now, I told this to Jenna, and Jenna at first was like, there's no way that's what she just said. But then I clarified to her, I do mean a rock that came from a stream.
A long time ago, been used a long time.
It had been used forever. So
It's clean.
Mama got a nice, heavy, smooth creek rock, and she would put her kraut or her mixed pickles or whatever in the crock, and then, you know, her brine and everything. And then she would take a dinner plate and put on top of it, upside down, to make like a weight and a dome. And then she would put the creek rock on top of it to really weight that down.
Cold and
And then she would set it, she would cover it with the crock lid, and she would set it in the dairy. Now the dairy, if y'all don't know what that is, everybody here has one. It's a building. Most of the time it's built into a hillside. It has your well pump, your spring house.
cold and hot.
It's cold, not cold.
It's cooler than
It's
outside.
cooler than outside. It's about, I'd say year round, even in the winter, it stays a solid temperature. So probably like 60-ish degrees. And so she would put it in the dairy to ferment. And then when she wanted some, she just went out there, took the lid off, took the creek rock off, took the plate off, and used her big spoon and dipped it out and brought it in and made it. So one thing I want to tell you is that and when I say make it, she would fry bacon or sausage or hot dogs or whatever, any kind of meat really. And then she would go out and get some, and when it was not too hot, she would add the mixed pickles or the kraut or whatever to that fat and just stir it around. And that's how she made it. Ferments are best eaten raw, which is why she waited till it cooled off a bit. Because when you heat a ferment, you kill the probiotics that are in it. This one's going to be very hot.
Mm-hmm.
This will be my jar. Mark has a soft mouth. I do not. Okay. I did not use a spring or weight in the first one. Jenna, did I answer that for you already? Or do you need me to come back to that? Common sense isn't so common. Yeah, you're right. And sometimes it's because people just haven't done things, you know. And not... Common sense is keeping your hands clean. Fermenting is something that you learn. So let's not confuse that. It's not what I'm saying at all. Fermenting is a skill.
You didn't burp it.
I didn't burp it, did I? This is why I have a good husband. To keep me straight, guys. All right. Okay. You missed the answer. Okay, so I'm going to tell you again. Sometimes I use springs. Sometimes I use glass weights. Sometimes I don't use anything, like I'm not doing right now, because all my glass weights, my springs, are busy. I haven't found that it really makes a difference. So you do as you want. If it's concerning to you, then use the, I need a lid bag.
That's one in your hand, isn't it?
Oh, duh. It's already on the thing. If it's concerning to you, use a weight. If you're not at all worried about it, don't worry with it, because you're putting it in a jar. Now, you're never ever going to seal these. These are not going to be water bathed, and they do not need to go into your, they don't need to go in your fridge either, though. So that's the other thing that I see online a lot is people, like, they'll move and say that you have to keep your ferments in your fridge. So if you bought something like kraut from a grocery store, you would. But so fermentation by default is controlled decay. I mean, that's what it's doing. It's fermenting. So our recipe, you don't need to worry with. A refrigerator, and after it has worked for 40 days, by the way, that's how long you let it work for. And when I say work, I mean bubble and ferment. I'm going to put the rest of the brine in here. Then, right, so when the jars like weep out, it's just doing its job. That's what it's supposed to be doing. They're supposed to bubble That's what fermentation is. And so I'm going to use the rest of this brine. I'm putting it in a jar. You can see that. To top it off. So like once a week, I'll check and see if it's bubbling. And I'll see if it looks like the liquid has gone down on the side of the jar. You know how like when you can green beans or something and it siphons and you can see there's a water line, like here's the green beans and then the water line might be down a little bit on the jar. You can see that same action with kraut. And I'll top it off each time because you want to keep it under liquid. That's how you keep mold from forming.
How long before, Trey?
So we ferment this for 40 days or longer, but really it continues to ferment for the whole time the jar is on the shelf. But it has to do it for 40 days before you open it and try to use it because it won't be ready until that time. 40 days is biblical. You know that. So the signs will come back around to being time to kraut again. And that's when it's time to eat the kraut you made before. And we ferment all through the year. You don't have to just ferment in the fall. But fermenting in the summer doesn't work as well, just so you know. And that's because the weather's too warm. The fall of the year is the right temperature to do it. And then the winter, you know, will keep it right all season. Okay, so let's recap really quickly. The brine was 1 gallon of spring water, 1 cup of canning salt, 1 cup of white vinegar that was 5% acidity. We use White House vinegar if that matters to you guys. It's what my grandmother and Mark's grandmother, that's just what everybody in our family's always used. You do need to blanch the corn for 8 minutes and then cut it off the cob if you're making mixed pickles. Or you can just ferment pickled corn. Mm-hmm. And pickled corn is great. To ferment pickled corn, you just cut your corn into little nubs like this and put it in a big jar and put this same brine over it.
She had a crock. She did it right, so she could put the whole head of corn.
Mark's grandma didn't cut it, but if you're putting it in these jars, you have to cut it. In the crock, you don't have to cut it. Okay, so you can do that. You can also ferment just beans. You blanch the beans for 8 minutes. You've got to let them completely cool. Remember, anything that's hot has to come to completely to room temperature before you do anything with it.
I heard somebody put green tomato in yours.
My brother puts green tomato in his.
Have you eaten that?
A long time ago. Granny put whatever was in the garden in hers. Let me turn you around here and we'll talk, guys. Let me get my mess up. Let me see. How can I turn this camera around? Hello. All right, now let me sit down. You can see I'm a mess and a half. Okay. Now I'm gonna do the questions, and now that I'm done canning, my hair can come down. Okay. So you can do corn on the cob, pickled. You can do corn off the cob pickled, which is what we're doing in mixed pickles. You can do green beans pickled, all with the same brine. You can do kraut pickled with this same brine. The kraut does not get blanched. Peppers do not get blanched, but beans and corn do. Beans and corn get blanched for 8 minutes, and then you lay them out and let them come completely to room temperature before they go in a jar or get cut off the cob or however you want to do it. Then you pack them into the jars just like you saw me do, and then you ladle the brine over, burp it, ladle some more over if it needs it. Set aside any excess brine that you have and keep an eye on your jars. You're going to put your jars in a cardboard box lined with newspaper, and then you're going to put it in a cool, dark place. You're going to check it once a week, and if it needs more brine added to it, you're going to add more brine to it. At the end of 40 days, it's ready. It probably won't work or bubble out or seep any further. So what you do at the end of the 40 days is you tighten it down, you wash the jar, and then you set it on your pantry shelves, and it's shelf stable. We have eaten kraut that's like years old. So what happens is fermentation is literally controlled decay, and it's not going to become dangerous. It's just going to become off in texture or maybe too sour. That's going to be it. So I think probably the oldest kraut we've ate was probably 2 or 3, wasn't it?
Speak for yourself.
Mark said, speak for myself. Well, no, I guess we ate mammoths forever, didn't we?
I got memo stuff that's more than that regularly when she was alive.
Right. Okay. So I don't know how many years we've eaten it, but it doesn't like ex nihilo form botulism and become toxic to you and dangerous.
But if you get it out and it's soft or texture's not
Right. If you get it out and it's soft or the texture's not right, it's fine. Now, here's another thing that you need to know. Sometimes in the top of the jar, right here at the very top, it will look yeasty, if that makes sense. And that's normal. What's not normal is mold. Now, mold is recognizable. It's usually like blue-green, it's fuzzy, it can be black. What just sealed?
one of those.
I just heard a jar seal.
One of those.
With a stupid ball lid, it probably did.
We use it by torquing it. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, we heard a lid seal. What was I telling them?
It'll last.
Oh.
If the texture's not right and you don't want to eat it, don't eat it.
Right, if the texture's not right and you don't want to eat it, don't eat it. But don't worry about that little bit. And it's like a
I think
yellowy,
it looks starchy.
white, starchy looking color. And we just spoon that off.
But we also,
And I don't rinse the kraut.
well, mixed pickles. Memo on that is mixed pickles.
I don't mix them or I don't rinse them. Mark says rinse your mixed pickles. I don't do it.
I do.
I don't ever.
I'll do it.
I never rinse the mixed pickles or anything. I don't rinse it because I want all that good probiotics. Mama rinsed it, he said. Mine didn't.
You still get plenty of probiotics.
So Jenna says, sorry for listening. Do all fermented things require 40 days? Some things, okay, so I can't speak for anyone else's fermentation recipes. I can't tell you if they would be good. I can't tell you if you need to refrigerate them. You have to follow, if you're going to follow somebody else's recipe, you need to follow whatever it is that they tell you. Now, some people, when they make kraut or other things, they're going to add things like fennel seed or dill seed, things like that. And if that's what you want to do, do it. I don't like licorice, so I don't like fennel seed, and I don't want fennel kraut. But some people love it. So if you're going to do that kind of fermentation, you need to follow all their steps and do it their way. And most of the time that I've seen with fermenting, like with things like that, is that's when they're doing the cabbage and they're like pounding the cabbage and salting it and adding the fennel seed. And then they're fermenting it in the big bowl for 2 or 3 days before they put it in a jar, and then they're putting it in the jar and ladling that juice over it. I don't do that. That's not how I ferment. And so I can't really speak to that. But I have seen it done. I don't think it looks appetizing, but somebody else may love it. Anything that you ferment with us is going to be 40 days. So it's getting ready to be apple season. We make apple cider vinegar. We do not can with homemade apple cider vinegar. Because you don't know the acidity on that. I mean, you could get it tested, but we don't. We make apple cider vinegar for things like our vinaigrettes and for, for when we make fried chicken to tenderize it, we'll add like a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar to it. But we don't can with it. So to make, to make apple cider vinegar,
Apple cider vinegar in a ferment for mixed pickles?
no. Apple cider vinegar, some people can, like they make their bread and butter pickles with apple cider vinegar, and you can't do that with the homemade.
That's what I was thinking. It doesn't even
Right.
sound good.
You can't do that with the homemade. So to make apple cider vinegar, you're going to wash your apples real good. Make sure you get unwaxed apples. Buy them from an orchard if you can. And then what you do is, you know, say we're going to be making apple butter soon. So we'll peel and core the apples, and then all of those peels and cores get set aside in a big bowl. And at the end of the day, when we're done doing all the peeling and coring, those will get put into either crocks or into jars just like we did this kraut, okay? And we add half of the jar full of the scraps, the apple scraps. And then we add about a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar with the mother, or if you have a vinegar mother, which we do, you can just take the mother out and put it in and then add spring water to it. So if you don't, then you're going to use vinegar with the mother, and you're going to fill the jar halfway with the apple scraps. Then you're going to fill or about a 1/4 cup of the apple cider vinegar with the mother, and then the rest of it all the way to the top, you're going to put spring water, and then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. Then instead of putting a lid on it like this, you're going to put a piece of linen cloth tightly woven that like gnats and stuff can't get through, and you're going to screw it on with the ring. You're going to let that sit for 21 days, and then you're going to decant it. And when I say decant it, I mean you're going to pour the jar out through a sieve, and you're going to compost the scraps, and you're going to put the liquid back into jars, and you're going to put another piece of linen on and screw it down, and it's going to go another 21 days. Now that one's a 42-day ferment, Jenna, so sometimes it's 40 days, sometimes it's 42. But that's how you make the apple cider vinegar. So at the end of that second set of 21 days on day 42, you start tasting it. And if it's to your liking, then you put a lid on, screw it on, wipe the jar good, sit it on the shelf, and you've got apple cider vinegar to do things other than can. Okay, so BB girl, I've been watching on TV but couldn't figure out how to ask a question. Had to get on my phone. Can you do this method with just jalapenos or cucumbers or okra? I have done it with just banana peppers. I have not done it with just jalapenos or just cucumbers. When we do fermented, sorry, cucumbers, we have a different recipe that we use. And then it just sits out. This is so against everything I've just told you, but when we do the fermented cucumbers, it sits out for, I think is it 5 days, and then it goes in the fridge, because cucumbers are going to get slimy faster, so you want to slow that ferment down if it's a cucumber. So when we're talking about pickles with cucumbers, is different than the kraut and the peppers, which are more firm and are not going to get slimy. Thank you. Okay, sorry. You don't need to burp the jars at all, Jenna. So they're not screwed on so tight that they couldn't burp themselves. That's the reason, like Mark was saying, oh, you screwed that one on too tight. When we put it on, I'm literally just doing that. I'm not torquing it down. This is loose enough that lid will allow, as it bubbles, if it needs to burp, that's why it seeps out. That's the reason we have it in the box with the newspaper. Will well water not work? Only spring water. Well water has a lot of minerals in it, usually a lot of iron, most often, and I personally would not. I use filtered spring water. So the compound's fed by spring. I have easy access to that. If you don't, you could try filtered well water. I definitely wouldn't use it straight out of the tap though. Okay, let me make sure I don't miss anything.
Chlorine would kill it.
Yeah, so, well, from a well wouldn't have chlorine, would it?
Oh, unless you meant tap.
You definitely cannot use municipal water to ferment. So you can buy gallons of spring water for $1 or $2. We only use spring water, and we take our jugs and fill them up at the compound and then bring them home and filter them. And that's what we use for all of our canning. We don't can anything with well or municipal water. We wouldn't use municipal because all the crap that's in municipal water. And we don't have well water, so that's not even an option for us. Okay. And I haven't done okra with this brine. We like our okra fried, so I can't say. I mean, you could try it, but as far as okra goes, I can't speak to that. But we have done, we do beans, corn, peppers, kraut, green tomato can go in it.
In any ratio, don't worry about
Yeah.
the seed, whatever.
So it's literally these end of garden pickles that we just made together. Anytime that you don't have enough to do a whole canning, which means to make 7 quarts, or 9 pints, whatever it is that goes in a pressure canning. We don't do pints, so I don't really know.
Pressure can't.
So whatever we don't have enough of, we literally just chop it up and it goes in a bowl, and then we do this with it, just like you saw, and then I start stuffing jars and we ferment it.
You don't overdo it on peppers.
Right.
But any of the ratio of that other stuff, 1 or 2 or 3 of them, any ratio would be fine.
Mark says don't overdo it on peppers. I like it spicy.
Well, I'm just saying, if all you had was peppers, you wouldn't want to do peppers that way. You want to do them a different way.
Right. Okay. So, you know, do it away. And Mama would add cauliflower.
Not really, no.
I guess that was just
I
my.
try to pickle cauliflower. I ain't really.
Mark didn't like the fermented cauliflower, but my grandmother would add cauliflower to it too.
Cauliflower sounds good in it.
You're welcome, Jenna. And if you have any more questions, you know how to get in touch with me, and we'll do anything we can to help you. Same for all of you. So, I don't know. We have an idiot here in our midst, making ugly comments. Anyway. I don't know how to block somebody on YouTube, but I will be finding out. All right. I'm glad to see you guys. And yeah, we'll do one on Vent Elixir. Actually, we have a whole course on herbalism. It's available on our website. It has all the Vent Elixirs in it. But we will talk about Vent Elixirs on here one day, maybe this fall. And that's it for today. All right, we'll catch you guys later. I'm going to go and make more tomato sauce.